This is Between the Uprights. Football is life. The rest is just details. Here are your hosts, Joe, Matt, and Chris.
With 2 weeks left in the 2024 NFL season, we have 5 teams competing for the final playoff spot. The Chargers and Broncos currently hold the 6th and the 7th seed, with the Colts, Dolphins, and Bengals closely on their heels. Each of them need at least the Chargers or the Broncos to lose out. They need to lose 2 games to make this thing a reality for both the Bengals, Dolphins, and the Colts. That's how it needs to happen for all of them. The Colts are the closest one currently in the 8th spot right now, looking in. But we are here to talk about which team out of these 5 teams is going to take home the final AFC wildcard spot, because it is absolutely up for grabs. And honestly, the reason it is up for grabs because the Denver Broncos have probably one of the hardest roads remaining, ending in week 18 against the Kansas City Chiefs, which could still be playing starters depending on how week 17 goes for them. And that would make the Broncos possibly lose out. And that means that the Colts, Dolphins, and Bengals could have a shot at getting in. So we're going to go to our panel here because I don't even know who to pick. So I'm going to rely on you guys to guide me, because I just don't know based on the Dolphins offense. Joe Burrow with the blonde hair, throwing dimes, putting up all kinds of yards all the time. And the Colts, who just had one of the greatest showings of a running back this season in what JT did. Who is taking home the final wild card spot? And I want to go to Sammy first on this one because his team's in the conversation, but I'm saving his ass for last because I want everyone else to get him spun so he gets a fucking tirade going. So I'm going to go to the person who's going to get him spun probably equally. Chris, who is taking home the final wild card spot in the AFC?
So for me personally, I mean, the only people that you really have to look at is either going to be the Los Angeles Chargers and the Denver Broncos, right? Those are really the only 2 spots that are kind of up for grabs because the Ravens have already pretty much sealed their way in. So when you're looking at both, I don't see, like, I know there's several teams behind them. I know the Colts are behind them. I know the Dolphins are behind them. I know the Bengals are behind them. So when I'm looking at like the last couple games that they have of the season, we know how important they are. We know how hard it is to even get to the playoffs to begin with, which, good up on Denver. I think they've kind of done the same thing that we just talked about when it came to the Commanders. So good for them. I don't really see Denver getting knocked out of the way, to be honest. Like their hardest one is obviously going to be the Chiefs. It's really going to depend on, where the Chiefs are, what they're planning to do. I don't necessarily see the Chiefs losing that, so I could definitely see Denver going 1-1. And as long as they go on 1-1, I think they're fine. Yes, they do have to go against the Cincinnati Bengals. But with this, as well as they've been playing, they've also had a lot of inconsistency, I feel like, throughout pretty much the entire season. And I think that's just continues to kill them, to be honest. They make a lot of mistakes at the wrong time. And I think we've talked about this in the past. It's where, good teams know how to win at their worst and bad teams know how to lose at their best. And I think that's kind of completely involved what the Cincinnati Bengals have done so far this season. Is they've been in really good spots against really good teams to take over the game, to win the game last minute, and they somehow find a way to lose it, which I hated for them. I would love to see them in the playoffs. I just don't foresee that happening. It would take a lot for any of these teams, including, which, if y'all remember, since Sammy's here, I'm going to call it out. I was the one on the bandwagon, which I'm not really on wagons.
Oh, I remember. Here
he comes. He's coming with the heat. I was all for the Dolphins being a dark horse and getting into the playoffs. That's when their quarterback first came back. It looked like they were kind of on the right trail at that point. I think they also, it's very similar to Cincinnati. I think they have a lot of inconsistency right now where they are finding ways to lose the game. It's not that they're terrible teams. They're just finding ways to shoot themselves in the foot. So when we're looking at that, and you only have 2 games left, so it's not like you have 3 or 4 or 5 more games to get things right and get back on track. You don't. So when you're looking at that, and you're looking at if there's not one thing, Denver has shown that they are about the game and they know how to operate the game. They may not make these great plays and the grades, they're all over CNN and all, like it's like the greatest plays in the world. Like, you don't really see that. But what you do see based on their head coach is they know how to operate the game. They can make the changes they need to make. They can make the adjustments they need to make when they need to make them. So at the best time is when they, for the most part, and I'm not huge on the Broncos to begin with. I don't think they're going to do much in the playoffs. But I don't see any of the teams that are kind of trailing behind them that's really going to knock them out. I thought for sure it was going to be the Dolphins, but since that situation was stated, they have just seemed to decline. And I hate to say that I am kind of on Matt's train on that when it comes to how they react in the cold. And I think a lot of their upcoming games are cold weather. So I wasn't really a big fan in that. I was like, nah, they'll be fine. You can't really say it's about the cold. Well, seems there is a little bit of a difference. So I can't really get off that one. Matt has me suggested on that one. I'm definitely on that one. So I don't think they're going to be able to do enough to knock the Broncos out. I don't think the Chargers are going to go anywhere. So I think it's going to be exactly the teams that we see right now that we just posted on our Instagram with, like, over the weekend. I think those are the teams going to end up in the playoffs for sure. I think it's more so now just looking at the seeding, and that's, to me, is more so to do between the Ravens and the Steelers. I think that's where that's really going to pay attention to. But other than that, I don't really think there's a lot more left as far as the AFC is concerned. I think we know who's going to the playoffs.
And you brought up a lot of good points, but I want to be clear. The current projected weather in Cleveland for game time is 51 degrees.
They've got a
that's
shot.
That's going to change, I promise.
The Dolphins got a shot, baby.
I promise you that's going to change. I'm in Pittsburgh right now. I can tell you right now that's going to change by then.
Hey, I'm just saying, this is according to AccuWeather, ESPN right now, game time weather projected is an overcast 51-degree day, and I think that plays in the Dolphins' favor. Now, I will say the Broncos.
We're not losing the DTR.
Wait, wait your turn, Sammy. We'll get to you. So. But, you start to look at the Broncos are the team that if they're going to lose, like, that's who is going to lose. I don't think the Chargers, who have the Raiders and the Patriots, who are closer to projecting for the number one overall pick than they are for a playoff thing. They're not making the playoffs. They're already eliminated, right? Whereas the Broncos are facing real, legit playoff caliber teams. No one can tell me that the Cincinnati Bengals offense, the defense is clearly not playoff caliber, but the offense is playoff caliber, all right? They have Joe Burrow has kept them in a lot of games they had no business winning. And if you look at Denver, who had a lead against the Chargers, who was up on the Chargers in the first half by 2 scores, lost that game. And that is kind of concerning going down the stretch against playoff caliber talent, who they have remaining on their schedule. All of the teams they face are playoff caliber talent. Now, that is what's concerning me, which is why this is a conversation. This is why the Denver Broncos are the focal point of who could take that final wildcard spot, which the Broncos currently hold. So, Matt, I'm going to go to you on this one. Clearly, Chris feels that the Broncos are cemented. She doesn't see them losing out. We already know. Sammy turned his camera off so he'll get his Tyreek Hill jersey or Tua Tagovailoa. I don't even know which one it is. And his Dolphins chain on, ready to go. As if the Dolphins stuff in the background wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for us to know he's a Dolphins fan. It is the Tua. Got it. So I'm going to go to you on this one, man. Who is getting this final wild card spot? Because it's really, really up in the air, and it starts this weekend. Bengals, Broncos.
So, sorry, I had to clear my throat there. Let me just start off with, he's gone.
No, go on. Say what you're going to say, Matt.
I need you here for this, Sammy. You better stay here. Well, the first thing I was going to say is let's just do a process of elimination. I'm going to tell you exactly the one team I know for a fact who isn't going to get it, and that's the Miami Dolphins. I said, Chris, we were on here. I don't know how long ago we were on here. It was probably about a month ago. It was when they got to 5-6. They were on a 3-game win streak. Ooh, big whoop. They're on a 3-game win streak.
The Rams are not nobody.
They never beat anybody good, including the Niners, because the Niners. Oh, congratulations. You beat the Rams. they don't beat anybody good and they don't win in cold weather. And that's what I came in here and said. I said they're not going to make the playoffs because they don't beat anybody good and they're not going to win in cold weather. Guess what? They don't have to beat anybody good down the stretch, but 51 degrees is still going to be too cold for the Miami Dolphins with all their flashy guys, with all their speed, with all this, with all that. They're not going to win. Sammy, I got bad news for you. You're either going to lose to DTR or you're going to lose to old decrepit Aaron Rodgers and Woody Johnson, who's soliciting his kids for advice as far as Madden ratings go. So it's not going to happen for the Miami Dolphins. It's just not going to happen. They're not going to do it because they are not them. They need to change something. The Miami Dolphins are broken. They need to change their formula. It's not going to work. So no, the Miami Dolphins are not going to make the playoffs. Everybody else, however, has a chance. The Dolphins don't, but everybody else does. Cincinnati, I think, has a great shot at it. I think Cincinnati has a great shot to potentially get into this because, like I said, Miami's going to lose 1 or 2 because they got a couple cold weather games down the stretch. Indianapolis has a shot because they have the Giants and the Jags. Now, they might lose one because Anthony Richardson, if he's proven anything, has proven that he can lose no matter what the circumstance is. He can find a way to lose even when there was no possible way to lose. So Anthony Richardson could find a way to lose one of those 2 games. However, I don't know if he will. And then the Cincinnati-Denver game, which is coming up next week, will have huge, huge implications because if Cincinnati wins, they obviously get a tiebreak. And like you mentioned, Joe, Denver, of the 2 teams that are both 9-6 right now in the 6 and 7 seeds, the Chargers and the Broncos, Denver's the one that's going to fall off because they have Cincinnati and then they have Kansas City. By the way, as an aside, if the Chargers manage to lose to those 2 teams down the stretch and miss the playoffs, that might be the most Chargers thing that I ever heard in my entire life because only the Chargers would find a way to do that. But I don't think they will because Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh feel like they've kind of changed the narrative around the Chargers. But so I think that game next week between the Bengals and the Broncos is going to be what decides who gets that playoff spot. And I think the Bengals are going to win it. I think the Bengals are going to go in there and they're going to beat the Denver Broncos and they are going to have a great chance at that final playoff spot. Now, I just said that game would decide it. I just lied to you. It's not going to decide it because because Denver plays Kansas City in week 18. They could easily lose that game. Obviously, Kansas City's only lost 1 time this entire season. However, Kansas City is going to have the one seed locked up by then. So it won't matter at all. Okay. So Kansas City is going to rest their starters and Denver is going to win in week 18. So that was a whole roundabout way of saying the Denver Broncos are going to get that final spot, regardless of what we like, regardless of what we want to see, regardless of what's best for the NFL. The Denver Broncos are going to get that 7 seed and sneak into the playoffs as that, Joe.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love what I've seen from the Denver Broncos, and I want to agree with you that they can hold on. That Chargers game concerns me with the level of competition because even you have said, even if the Kansas City Chiefs rest their starters, right? I mean, they don't have a lot of extra wide receivers and tight ends anyway, but even if they rest most of their starting skill players and Patrick Mahomes for Week 18, you yourself have said, do I think they can roll their second string out there and still win because they're just that well coached? Absolutely they can. Absolutely. Now, the good news is that I believe Denver is at home for that game, so that does give them some leverage playing in Mile High and just in January. That's a hard place to go play because it's going to be full of fucking snow and cold as shit. But, you look at the Bengals, who you also are pretty high on. They have the second hardest schedule out of the 5 teams. I mean, they got the Broncos first, and then they get Pittsburgh, who has to win that game to keep their hopes of winning the NFC North, right? So you look at that sort of thing there and you like, okay, so then you look at the Colts and the Dolphins, who easily have the easiest road. And if the Bengals beat the Broncos, all bets are off. These guys are looking at it, right? So Sammy, I am going to give you a little bit extra hype after these guys have gotten you spun. It is your turn, my guy. We already know who you're going to talk about. You're wearing everything. Go ahead and go with your fandom generated, completely unbiased, take on who is winning the 7th seed.
First of all, what I was gonna say, look, guys, the Dolphins, very slim chance we make the playoffs. Okay, honestly, I have been very hopeless for the entire season, but there seems to be a sliver of hope that I'm holding on to. But I'll be realistic as well. I'll be very realistic as well. I do think that the Dolphins are just they're gonna win out. I believe that. I believe we're gonna win out, but I also think that the Broncos are gonna take care of business. The Broncos are gonna take care of business against the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm not in for the business of like letting other teams win and then we're in. I don't like that one bit. And I just think the Broncos have just been a solid team all year long. Their offense has gotten better and better each and every week. The defense has always been elite. And I think the bottom line is this. I think that if the Dolphins were going to make the playoffs, they should have been in already. And they're not. They're not in right now. They're sitting below 500. It's been a failure of a season. And I'm not gonna subject myself to hope when, quite frankly, I'm over it, man. I really am over it. This year has been an utter failure. We should have won the division. This is the year we should have won the division. This is the year we should have made a step. And unfortunately, I am broken. I am a broken man. I did a lot. I literally paused my camera to get in this fit. And unfortunately, it's just been a rough year, guys. It has been a rough year. I'm looking at the Patriots. They got Drake May. They have an elite QB. I'm looking at, the only thing I can be happy for is the fact that the Jets still suck. So I guess that's something I could look at and be like, yeah, that's great. But, I'm just like, really, I've been eating a lot lately. And I think that's a sign that I just think that I'm just over these damn Dolphins, No amount of happiness that they give me for these next 2 weeks will ever get my hope back unless, we make some significant changes. So yeah, I'm sad, guys. I'm sad. I'm very sad.
Real quick, Joe, before it gets back to Joe, I just want to say I've never gotten more joy out of somebody saying that he's a broken man more than I just got from Sammy saying that he's a broken man. That might be one of the most joyous things that I've ever heard.
Oh, so really? Yeah.
I'm up here enjoying your misery down there, Sammy, because I knew it was going to happen the entire time. And now seeing you down there broken, I can't be more happy. This is one of the best days of my life. This is amazing.
So close to Christmas Eve.
First of all, look, I'm still getting presents in Christmas Eve. All right, Chris, let's not get too depressing now. Okay, I'm still getting presents. I get to see my dad. That's cool. And other than that, it's just been very, very rough for the family here. Because of this damn team. So, damn it. I hate you.
How are the Heat doing, by the way, Sammy?
This career. I hate all of you. I do. I hate I'm sick and I'm tired.
Hey, that's probably the most rational explanation of how a Miami Dolphins fan is feeling about his team I've had in a hot minute. Usually, we're all fans of our teams, and normally we don't have the most rational viewpoints of our teams, but there's been some rationality. There's been some truth spoken today, and I really appreciate that. But I do have one thing I get to say in this video that I got yelled at by Broncos fans the last time I talked about the Broncos, which was the first franchise we ever pissed off on this channel. It was the Broncos country, not nation. They got mad at me because I said Broncos nation the last time, but it's Broncos country, baby. You guys are making the playoffs. You guys are holding on to the 7th seed. The entire panel agrees.
This has been Between the Uprights. Football is life. The rest is just details.